Got everybody? Hi, I'm Natasha Gordon. I'm the co-president of Coordinating Council, which sponsors this event. We are made up of the 6 parent organizations at the different schools.
I don't think the mic's
It's not on?
All right, let's see. It
Sounds
was
loud to
on.
me.
Let's see what the, maybe we can put up the volume. I'm assuming, oh, try again.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes? No.
All right, I'll try it the other way. Lights on.
Feedback or something.
How's this?
No.
Hi. Okay, is that better? I'll just talk really close to it. I'm Natasha Gordon. I'm co-president of the Coordinating Council. Our members are made up of the 6 parent organizations from the different schools, and we sponsor this event and invite the League of Women Voters to moderate for us, which they volunteer to do every year. I'd like to thank the candidates for running and doing this for free and punishment. This event will be recorded and the video will be available on YouTube. Will provide a link that the different parent organizations will post. So your questions will be recorded. And I'm going to introduce Judy Temkin, who will be moderating for the League of Women Voters, and she's going to explain how it's going to work.
Thank you. All right, good evening, and thank you for coming to the North Shore Schools Board of Education Candidates Forum. I want to thank Natasha Gordon and Denise Reiner, co-presidents of the North Shore Coordinating Council of Parent Associations, for all their hard work to make this evening possible. They deserve a round of applause. A thank you as well to Betty Campy for her patience and help. Now, I am Judy, yes, give Betty a round of applause too. Please. I am Judy Jacobson, Temkin Jacobson, whatever you prefer, from the Port Washington Manhasset League of Women Voters, and I will be your moderator tonight. League rules state that the moderator must come from a town that is not represented by the candidates. I am from Manhasset. I do not vote in this election. Francine Furtado, right over there, will be our timekeeper, and she lives in Port Washington. I want to make a brief pitch for the League of Women Voters and tell you about our goals. We work to inform the electorate about candidates' views on issues through forums such as this, and through a variety of publications. We register voters at community events. We are a nonpartisan organization, which means we never support a candidate, although we do take positions on issues after studying them. We hope you will consider joining. There is a pad on the table at the entrance and a pen. And if you would like to get some materials from us, just put down your address and name, and we will send them to you. Remember, the League is not for women only. Right now, the other thing that you should all note is that voting will take place on May 21st from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at the high school gym. I will now read the rules and procedures for the evening. After that, I will read a short biography of each candidate and call on him or her for an opening statement. We will then be open to questions. Please hold your applause until after the closing statements. We want to maximize the time for questions. Questioners should line up behind that microphone, and please state your name before asking a question. And the other thing we ask is please ask a question rather than give a lengthy comment, because we really want to hear what the candidates think about the issues. So, here are the rules and procedures. The moderator will be a member of the League of Women Voters from outside the district. Candidates for the same office will draw lots. They drew straws to determine the order of speaking. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for an opening statement. After all the candidates have spoken, the moderator will open the meeting to oral questions from the audience. Questioners will be asked to identify themselves. The moderator will instruct the audience to confine each question to the issues in the campaign and to take no more than 1 minute when asking a question. The moderator will be the arbiter of whether questions are appropriate, repetitive, or abusive. I've never seen abusive in this group, and I'm sure I won't tonight, so I'm not going to worry about it. Questions from the audience may be addressed to a specific individual or to the candidates in general, although all candidates will be given an opportunity to answer a question addressed to a specific individual. They don't have to, but they can if they choose to. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to answer the question. There will be no rebuttal. The moderator will attempt to rotate the order of speaking for each question. A league member will act as timekeeper. There's Francine. She'll hold up the signs. 1/2 minute before the end of any given time period, the timekeeper will warn the speaker by holding up the 30-second sign. When the time is up, she holds up a stop sign, and the speaker will be allowed to finish his or her sentence. Candidates will have 2 minutes for a closing statement and will speak in the same order as the opening statement. We don't have to worry about substitute speakers. We have all the candidates here. So, the use of props, charts, or visuals, and the distribution of campaign literature is prohibited. In accordance with league policy, audio taping or videotaping by authorized members of the media will be permitted only if agreed to by all the candidates present, and they have agreed. No other taping will be allowed. Okay. We are ready to go. So, you get the order, and Jerry Romano is first. Jerry Romano earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Communication Arts from the New York Institute of Technology. He is presently employed as a television executive. Mr. Romano led process improvement teams at CBS Broadcasting that evaluated utilization and made recommendations that cut significant costs without reducing quality. He created and successfully managed budgets and is accustomed to taking a leadership role where a lack of leadership exists. Jerry served on nonprofit boards, for example, the Emmy Awards, for over 30 years. He believes he succeeded by asking good questions that kept the organization on track and by monitoring expenses. He asks if an expenditure is necessary and effective and what would happen if that expenditure was not made. Let us welcome Jerry Romano.
Thank you. This is, okay. I'm here because I've been going to school board meetings for 15 years in this district. And like Judy just said, I'm more about the why than the what, okay? I'm concerned that the school district is not focusing on why they're doing things, why they're spending our money, why they're offering certain classes. And when I show up at school board meetings, they always answer with the what. This is what we do. This is what we did. And in business, we have the advantage that we have competitive forces being thrown at us every day. As I always say, somebody's trying to steal my cheese every day. All right? Somebody's trying to steal my business. So I have to be better, smarter, faster, cheaper than everybody else to succeed. And sometimes you can't be all those things, but you still have to succeed. And I think when you have an organization like a school district where they don't have competitive forces, you have to work that much harder to search out those aspects that make you better, smarter, faster than what they are. One of the other reasons is I think there's a lack of transparency in the information that's fed out to the community. Now, these came out in the past week. You may have received these at home, and they have some good information in them. But what they don't tell you is, if you were in a competitive marketplace, where does North Shore stack up? Where does North Shore stack up as far as competition from surrounding districts who are able to do what we do here for much less? And that's a fact. Those facts exist. You can look them up. You can see what Manhasset does and Herrick's does, and people will say, oh, they do testing and they do that, and they make up all kinds of stories that aren't true, okay? But the fact is there is a lot to be learned when you don't have the competitive nature of the marketplace in play. So I want to be in a position where I could be on the inside and affecting change. I've had people say to me, well, you can't change anything. The majority is going to overrule you on anything you say. And I said, you know what? You got to start somewhere. And I'm ready to start somewhere. I'm ready to do that. And I think I can make change because I've led organizations. I've run major productions. I've worked on some of the largest shows on the planet. I still do. And I do it well. And people still come back to me. I've been working with the same people in my industry for 40 years now. And there's a reason why they keep coming back, because they trust me. They think I do a great job. I'm honest with them. And I want to be able to do the same thing here at North Shore.
Thank you. David Ludmore received a Bachelor of Arts from Vassar College. He then earned a Master's in Business Administration from New York University. Mr. Ludmore is the owner and chief executive officer of an industry-leading domestic textile manufacturing company, serving the United States and international markets with 2 locations, New York and South Carolina. He is chairperson of the North American Union Manufacturers and Distributors Military Committee. David is the current school board vice president, completing the 3rd year of his term as a trustee. He serves on the Legislative Action Committee, the Construction Steering Committee, and the Bond Steering Committee. He formerly served on the Policy Review Committee and participated in the District Guidance Review. In addition, he serves as the president of the Glenwood-Glenhead Civic Association. He is a Seacliff Softball and Gold Coast Little League board member and coach. Let us welcome David Ludmore.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Coordinating Council, and also everyone who came out tonight. I appreciate it. So I remember sitting back here 3 years ago about how prepared I was at the time. Since then, I've sat through 3 budget cycles, sat through various student personnel and policy debates, the long and thorough search for a new superintendent, and I can certainly say that I'm more prepared now than I was 3 years ago. I'm looking forward to discussing that with everyone tonight as we discuss the issues that are facing us as a district, some old, some new, from New York American Water to LIPA to taxes to testing to unfunded mandates to curriculum to student social and emotional wellness. These are all important, and I look forward to sharing what I know in what will be an informative and hopefully a fact-filled discussion tonight. But I also wanted to take a step back and talk a little bit about why I choose to volunteer my time for the district. I've been thinking a lot in the last couple weeks about those images we saw of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris that went up in flames. That building took about 80, 90 years to build in the 12th century. And the people who designed that building, who quarried the stone, who wove the tapestries, knew that when they started that undertaking, they would not be alive to see its conclusion. But they did it anyway, because they felt there was a higher purpose to what they were doing. And to some degree, I see a parallel between what they're doing and what people in Glenwood Landing and Seacliff and Glenhead did 100 years ago, when they set aside certain land and they decided to build buildings. And for the decades since, when people have maintained those facilities and grown them and adapted them to current times. I don't think any of them thought about STEM classes or robotics or Chromebook charging stations are all the things that we now think about as part of an educational program today. But they did prioritize education both for its intrinsic value of what it means for the next generation of our youth, but also what it means for this community as the economic center and the driving of all of our property values. And I see myself in that continuum as a steward of this school district, a small link in that long chain. I want to be clear, that does not mean that we can't think about the temporal concerns we have right now. Certainly, finances and fiscal prudence are incredibly important. We need to hold the administration accountable for the decisions they make and the way that they spend our money. We need to be open, we need to be transparent. And those are lessons that I've learned in my business. Quite frankly, you don't run a domestic textile manufacturing operation for 20 years that's successful and growing without understanding about being fiscally responsible, about understanding competitive forces, and about what it takes to grow. And I have that, and I bring that. But I also bring what I think is potentially most important, both from my business world and from leading of the district here, is the ability to see that faraway point in the distance to which we should all be heading, because it's not just about right now, it's not just about where we've been, but about where we're going, and I look forward to sharing that with everyone tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Ann Manning Russo graduated from Georgetown University with a Bachelor of Arts. She then went on to earn a Juris Doctorate from Fordham University School of Law. She currently works as a practicing attorney, specializing in labor law, pension funds, commercial and residential real estate, and trusts and estates. Ms. Russo has served as a trustee on the Board of Education for almost 6 years. She currently serves on the Construction Steering Committee, the Bond Steering Committee, and the Legal Review Committee. She is also board liaison to the Legislative Action Committee. Mary Ann initiated and served on the Guidance Review Committee and participated in the Athletic Review, the Tri-State Reviews, and the bond referendum in 2013 to 14. She also formerly served on the Policy Review Committee and the Mission and Vision Statement Committee. Prior to becoming a trustee, Mary Ann served on the executive boards of the Glen Head Parent-Teacher Association, the North Shore High School Parent-Teacher Student Association, the Middle School Parent-Teacher Association, and the Coordinating Council. Let us welcome Mary Ann Manning Russo.
Good evening. Thank you, Judy. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for moderating this event once again. Thank you to the Coordinating Council for once again making the arrangements and sponsoring it. Thank you to everyone who came out tonight, took time from their busy schedules on a rainy evening. And thank you to my fellow candidates for putting your hats in the ring and volunteering to serve our district. So I was asked the other evening what motivates me to be so passionate about our schools after my children have graduated and after being on the Board of Education for 6 years. And the answer to me is really simple. Our schools are the center of our communities, and it's important. I think we have a promise to keep to maintain them. My son graduated in 2017, God bless you, and he found his passion right here in the lighting booth, and he's studying to be a lighting designer. My daughter gleaned incredible management skills on the stage in this auditorium, being the assistant stage manager. I believe that we owe that same opportunity to future generations that my children had and benefited from here. But with that responsibility also comes a responsibility to be fiscally responsible to our community members. This community is truly an amazing place, and it's always been comprised of multi-generational families. You'll go to a football game or a play and you'll see the senior citizens there. We've always had a diverse economic district, and I think that brings its own benefits to our students living it's it's no big secret that we, like many districts across Long Island, are facing fiscal and economic pressures. We have an unusual situation here, and that not only are we facing the reassessment and the lack of deductibility of our taxes, but we do have the LIPA plant and American closure and American water. So that means that we have to look at our programs critically, not in a rash way that we want to just cut, but we have to look at these and evaluate them and make sure that we're doing this in the most fiscally responsible and prudent manner, that we can still gain and have these good outcomes that we have for our students, these opportunities for our students, but do that in the most fiscally responsible manner. So I have a law degree. I'm the last one sitting on the board with a law degree. I think it comes in pretty handy with these legal situations, and I hope that you will trust me going forward to represent you and your children.
Anthony Stanco graduated from the State University College of Arts and Sciences at Geneseo, New York. He then earned a Juris Doctor from the West Virginia University College of Law. Mr. Stanco is retired. He is involved in the restoration of both sailboats and older homes. He enjoys working with his hands and the planning, problem solving, and handiwork that his projects demand. Anthony has experience teaching, advising, advocating, launching organizations, trial work, parent counseling, and living in other parts of the nation and the world. He also has knowledge of construction standards, architecture, and the school district's history. Let us welcome Anthony Stanco.
Thank you. So, yes, this is my school. I went here, I went across the street when it was the Cassam Lane School, before it was the middle school. When I was in the 7th grade across the street, they had no chess club, so I started one. I've been involved with this whole community for most of my life, although a good portion of it I traveled. I lived other places. I consider myself extremely blessed. My level of experience in life, so many times I've met people and they've said to me, I don't know why I didn't do that. I want to commend everybody else that's running tonight, because I know that they're trying to do, my whole belief is that everyone does the best they know how. Everyone does the best they can. I have a quality that I think that this school needs, and it's been ignored somewhat. I remember some years ago, like 1987 or something, I was in a general store, and I saw a woman there, and I said to myself, I can tell by the look of her, she must have some story to tell. 2 years later, I was at a local drama production, and my girlfriend nudges me and says, look who's sitting in front of us. 2 rows up, Jackie Onassis. I don't have to know who the person is to feel who they are. You know, I said last year, I'm not going to win. I'm running. I'm not going to put up any signs. I'm still not going to put up any signs, because local politics shouldn't be like that. It's not what it should be. I remember I played chess with a guy because I started the chess club in 7th grade. You know, I didn't get defeated for years. So I ended up in Martha's Vineyard one snowy night, and I walked into high school. They had a chess club, and they said, hey, what would you say you are, a scale of 1 to 10? I said 10. They said, you're going to play Woody. So I played Woody. I beat Woody, but the thing was, Woody was really sweet, and he had a way of beating me because he could sing like an old spiritual. I didn't realize his father was the bishop of the Anglicans or the Episcopalians and the head of the cathedral in Washington, or his grandfather was Woodrow Wilson. He once asked me to be his bridge partner. And I said, you know, I got these kids, I got all this stuff to do, I can't do it. I've lived a charmed life because I learned certain things that led me to make the best decisions possible. You have to be true to yourself, and you have to be true to what you know, and if you ever abandon it, you're sunk.
Thank you. Sarah Jones earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Princeton University cum laude. She has worked for the past 19 years as owner and chief executive officer of a successful national catalog-based company, now serving 100,000 customers. Sarah is currently president of the Board of Education. She serves on the district Wellness, Safety, and Construction Committees. Sarah is co-founder of the volunteer-run nonprofit Seacliff Make Shop, providing hands-on STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math opportunities for children in the district. She was previously director of fundraising for City Meals on Wheels, raising several $1 million annually. Let us welcome Sarah Jones.
Thank you, Judy, for the introduction,
You're very
and
welcome.
I'm going to pull this closer. And for the League of Women Voters moderating for us tonight. We're really fortunate to have you guys. Thank you, Coordinating Council, for putting this together for us. And most of all, neighbors, thank you all for coming out tonight and finding time in your schedules amongst your other responsibilities to come and participate. We all really appreciate that. Thanks to your votes, I've served on the school board for the past 6 years, so I think in many ways my record is clear. Even if you didn't set aside those 3 hours every couple of weeks to watch the videos of our board meetings. But nonetheless, I want to highlight a few things. I've spent these years working to ensure the long-term well-being of our schools. And by that I mean in terms of our finances, our infrastructure, and certainly importantly, that we have a rich curriculum that gives all of our students a well-rounded and meaningful learning experience. When we moved here 19 years ago, one reason was definitely the school district. Our children are now at the middle school and at the high school, and I mean that somewhat literally. I think one of them is here somewhere rehearsing, so she may show up. But I think it's only relatively recently that I've been very consciously thinking about how grateful I am for the people of literally the past 100 years who came before us and who built these schools. The investments they made so that we have these buildings, these fields, this faculty, and the educational program that we have. It didn't happen overnight. It took tremendous commitment and planning on the part of the people and the generations that came before us. I think it's a tremendous gift to the community right now, and I think it's a huge responsibility as well. I know as a business owner, I have a 5-year plan, and our schools absolutely have one as well. But I also have a much longer horizon. I've been working to build a business that's going to last for the next 50 years, the next 100 years. And I think our school board owes the same to our community. That same commitment to pass this gift on, not just to our current students, but for the generations to come. We've worked so that our schools are at the point where our curriculum is rigorous, and our children have opportunities to learn so many things. Just examples: world languages, learn your play an instrument, 3rd grade, how to build a robot. We're proud of our class size, we're proud of our faculty, and we're proud of our commitment to every child. And we've done it while we're maintaining the lowest budget-to-budget increases in years. The tax levy is the lowest percentage of our budget that I've ever seen. The vast majority of our recent budget increases have gone to our educational programs, and we've even been able to make more students eligible to take the bus. I believe how our board has worked is critically important as well. Transparency is a core value to all of us, along with the opportunities the community to participate. We've got room to improve, and we're not perfect, but we have a lot to be proud of, and I really look forward to the conversation that we're going to have tonight and your questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, we are now ready for questions. Questioners, just walk right up to the microphone. Thank you. And state your name and then ask your question.
Hi, my name is Lisa Colasiopo, and
Could you pick the
Pick it up.
this little phone thing?
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that better?
yes.
I have a two-part question. Part one, some of you are already answered, but I was just wondering if you currently have children in the district, in one of the schools in the district. And part two is, I'm one of many parents that is not interested in test scores, doesn't really care if my child goes to Harvard. I am more interested in a well-rounded education for our students, one that fosters a love of learning, a lifelong love of learning and creativity. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions in this highly competitive world that we're in now, for how to accomplish that, how to achieve that. And also wondering if you would be in favor of additional recess for our elementary students.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, you are first.
Oh, boy.
I know.
My wife and I raised our two sons here in Seacliff. They both went through the schools. They did really well. And, you know, we're happy with how they turned out. As far as how each student does, reacts, learns, you say you don't want to do all the testing. Not everybody's different, you know. Some people are going to excel in the arts. I was great at music. I was great at putting on shows. That's where I went in my career. I could have been a better student, but I enjoyed those other things more. And I think it's up to the school and it's up to the parents really more to figure out where their children fit in and to guide them. That's our job. Our job is to guide our children. You can't count on the school to do everything for you. It's just not going to happen. And that's when they'll succeed.
Thank you. David.
So we have a minute and a half? That's like, I guess, an hour and a half on that question. So I'll just talk really fast. I went to Syosset High School, which I would not want to criticize. I got a good education and had good outcomes there. That said, I felt very much that my high school experience was about outcomes and about where I was going, and it wasn't about the journey. And I think that when my family was choosing what school district in which we wanted to live, we thought about where our students could understand what they were doing and think about what they were doing and be reflective as to why and what they were doing. Because it's not just about getting to some place and then finding out you're 30 years old and you think you've achieved what you thought you wanted to achieve, but you realize, as Jerry said, is that even what I want out of my life? Is that really what I'm about? And so I think North Shore does a very good job of helping students explore what they're doing, to your specific, and thinking about them things and being reflective. It's what we've embedded in the curriculum. It's what we try to do. I think that the question of having achievement and testing and also having room to explore and to grow doesn't have to be either or. One of the things that I was most proud of this year for our district was that when we did the review of our high school, the test scores were improving and the metrics compared to the districts were stronger, and yet we hadn't changed the approach of not teaching to the test. The way that we were trying to teach our kids learning for learning's sake, authentic learning, hands-on learning, project-based learning, which are all very high priorities and should be increasing priorities, was paying off in those results. So I got the stop sign. I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Marianne.
So my 89-year-old mother would tell you that life is about balance. She's 89. I think she figured it out. And I think that is true for our district. It's all about balance. Unfortunately, the recess at the elementary school was cut several years ago by the implementation of the FLES program. There's only so many hours in a day. In order to fit that in, they did have to make a slight reduction in recess. I would be all in favor of increasing it. I think children learn through their interaction. We recently had a training session for our teachers in purposeful play about 2 years ago through Columbia's Teachers College. When my children were going through the school, that sort of learning opportunity was much more closely integrated with the curriculum. We did the post office, we did the bakery, we did the the Colonial Village, which I think was cut down to a timeline. I think it may be a blimp on the radar now. And it's unfortunate, and I'm always glad that my children went through the school district where teachers were given more discretion in the curriculum and they had more authentic learning opportunities than they do now.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, I think what Marianne just said about authentic learning opportunities is central to my whole career when I was teaching and why I moved on to other things. Everything I've done actually has been proven to be a mentally healthy choice. It's good to have more than one career. It's actually very rewarding to work with your hands. I just sense these things myself. Okay, so I'm in love with Wuthering Heights. And the movie is just as good as the book, although it's different, you know. But, you know, Linton, Kathy comes back from the Linton party, and Heathcliff is there, and Linton says, "That blackguard's dirt is on you." And Kathy says, "Yes, yes, now get out!" And if you have a teenage daughter, that's like a little bit of it right there that in the schools we need to address. We really need to help them because of the time of their life. And I knew a young man, he graduated and then overdosed and died. And this is not good, you know. He was a polite young guy. There, in my opinion, are a lot of shortcomings in the school district addressing children's actual needs, and I consider them all children until they get out. They're children. They have a lot of growing to do and a lot of learning about what life truly means.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you, Lisa. I do have children in the district, which I mentioned. Did you mention yours? Yeah.
I have.
Who are in the middle school and the high school. I think this is an important point about the well-rounded education and the test scores. We have absolutely, over the fairly recent history of this district, had swings in how much time and money we've devoted to test scores. About 6-7 years ago, you would see whole skids of test prep materials being delivered into some of our schools. I think we made a lot of progress on that in terms of maintaining the kind of well-rounded, very rich, hands-on curriculum that so many parents are looking for. I did co-write the resolution on testing that helped us get back on track with that. And I think what's interesting about that is this past year, despite our efforts not to test prep, our grades 3 through 8 test scores were fantastic, better than a lot of our neighbors. But I think what's most important is that we continue to look at what's developmentally appropriate. And there's no question that recess at early ages, even more than we have, is developmentally appropriate. The kids are ready to learn what they're ready to learn at a certain age, and our curriculum should not fight that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Rob Mazzella, Glenhead. There was some recent articles in Newsday. In one of them, if you look at schools across Long Island, there were 25 similarly sized schools compared to North Shore. Of the 25 schools, North Shore had the 24th highest cost per administrative pupil, cost per student in terms of administrative costs. So 24th out of 25. If elected, would you endorse or support a thorough review of all the district's administrative costs to evaluate the necessity of them? And if it was found that some costs were unnecessary, would you ever consider lowering the overall budget by those unnecessary costs?
Thank you. And David, you're first.
Thanks, Rob. I think conceptually that is accurate. I certainly don't myself want to quote much from Newsday, but I think that it's a good question. I understand what you're asking. I think that the way that we fund our education is a product of the way that our education has been funded in the past. As a business owner, I can make decisions about what products I want to carry. I can make decisions about what markets I want to try to go into on the fly. Managing a school system is like piloting a giant freighter that is moving through the ocean. And it is not simple to just quickly go about face. As Sarah had mentioned earlier, we, years ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago, the increases to these budgets were 7%. 8%, 10%, 12%. We live in a tax cap situation where the budget can only increase by 2%, and of that, it's roughly $2 million this year, and of that, $1 million is contractually obligated to our teachers and our faculty and our staff, or at least the vast majority of it. So there's very little room in there to play. That said, with all due respect, I don't say that we haven't been looking at that all the time. In the past year, we have reduced the number of administrators that are in this district. We have found ways to consolidate. We have looked for opportunities without sacrificing what we're doing in terms of small class size and authentic learning to try to make those changes, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, David. Marianne?
So I think we do analyze the budget. I have personally, as a trustee, have continually asked for evaluations of programs, and I have always looked for areas where to cut. I think we have an obligation all the time to look at those numbers and see where we can make possible reductions, and I think we do that. I'm always open to those reductions as long as we're not sacrificing the quality of instruction. Part of that is really in the community as well, and what is going on outside of the community, where there are other economic factors playing into it that the community may feel the need for greater reductions, which we'd have to be sensitive to those demands without losing the integrity of the academic programs. So I wouldn't say wholesale, but I would just say automatically, well, we'll cut a certain percentage or a certain dollar amount, because then you may be looking at programs that the community values.
Thank you. Anthony?
Well, I went on record years ago against the Mandarin program. I thought it was a complete waste of money. And people say that it's helpful, it will develop your thinking. If you really want to develop a mind, don't introduce Mandarin in kindergarten. The kindergarten teacher could introduce that much Mandarin if you really love it. But introduce music. Music helps your brain grow. And learning how to write and read music has much better outcomes for growth. You want people to have maturity, growth, awareness. It doesn't make sense. There's no words. I don't care. It's the way it is. I accept life as it is. I don't make it up and pretend it's something else. One of the big problems we have, we spend a lot of money to make numbers. Just like a prosecutor wants to make numbers, they want to get all these, I was an attorney, really. Believe me. I've been to federal court. I've talked about legal matters in this district that people didn't seem to understand. And I've said we need an in-house counsel. All right? We would save money if we had an in-house counsel, because the person would have to, by law, have integrity. They have nothing to sell us, only the truth. So we have our own counsel, maybe two, if that's what's needed. It would save us money, definitely, billing-wise. And years ago, I brought up a problem with a bill, and it got back to me. Yes, Mr. Stanko, they lowered the bill.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. You have to review administrative costs. We do every year. And over the past few years, we've actually reduced a lot of administration, and I don't doubt at all that we will, at minimum, have to continue to do so in the future. I'll point out that virtually all of the current budget increase cost does go to programs. I feel very positive about that. And I want to put I want to add a little nuance to this conversation too about what's included in Newsday, in particular's administrative construct. There are things that we do want in there. We want to have building principals, for example. That's included. You want to have a business staff. They're in charge of all your internal controls over all the payments that we make, all your personnel, all your payroll. You need to have those controls in place. It does take staff to do that. And we want to have the ability to have strong curriculum that's coordinated over K-12 and that evolves with the changing needs of our students and with what our students are going to need in the future. So there's a lot of good work that goes on in administration, but absolutely we're going to continue to make sure that the money we spend there is focused on those pieces of it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And Jerry?
Well, spending my life in the business world, we have metrics. We use metrics to evaluate things. And what does that mean? We sit down, and I don't know if the school district does this. I don't think they do because the budget is very, very high compared to surrounding districts. All right? North Shore is spending 34% more than the county average. Okay? And you would think the results would be amazing, and they're not. Okay? If they're as good and they're spending 34% more, that's not good. That doesn't make sense. So we need metrics that evaluate administration, the teaching staff, utilization of classrooms, and also the buildings and how they're being used. You know, once you sit down and you look at it, you know, look at the pure numbers, then at least you have a basis for making a decision. I've walked into many school board meetings, and they've heard me over the years, and I've said, if we got rid of all of you and we let Manhasset run our schools, we could put a couple of $1,000s back into every single person's pocket in this school district. And, you know, I'm dismissed, all right? They're in denial. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But the fact is, Manhasset, Herrick's, they're not bad schools. They're doing great work, okay? My sister's kids went through Manhasset, and they did fantastic. All right. So what are they doing that's right? And that's where you come back to some of the things we do in business. It's called benchmarking. All right. Benchmarking is looking at what other people do really well and seeing how you can apply those techniques.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Tony Labate, Glen Head, former trustee. So my question, first of all, I'd just like to say that thank you all for taking the time, for running again, for putting your time in. It takes a lot of effort. You go to a lot of meetings. You spend a lot of time, and all volunteer time. I can't remember how many times people ask me how much I got paid to be on the board. So we all know that that doesn't happen. But for my 6 years on the board, Mr. Romano would come to every meeting and would ask us to close a school. So
Never said that.
you did.
I never said that.
You did.
Okay.
You're making that up.
All right.
It's a lie.
Excuse me,
Just
let's
wait,
have a
just
question.
wait.
So my question is,
That's unfair.
looking at our school district and the way our schools are laid out and how many students we have, and I know that we've recently done a look over the next few years and the percentage that we're using our schools. How do you view the utilization of our schools and how we'll continue to do that in the future?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marianne, you're on first.
Excellent. So we just had a capacity study, which and an enrollment study, and basically where that came out is that our buildings are being used at capacity. That doesn't mean that we had a demographic study as well, which said that our enrollment in the future years is basically holding steady. I'm not a big believer in closing schools or selling them off, because you know what? Real estate is unique, and that's why the law treats real estate uniquely, and you can't get it back once you lose it. So I think we have to have an open mind about how we utilize the schools. Maybe down the road there'll be some room for some efficiencies, but right now I don't see that there's any room for a school closure at the present time based upon the information that we have.
Thank you. Anthony?
Okay, so I'm an emotive person sometimes. There was an exchange, if you noticed it, and I thought that was sort of unfair. And then I missed really what this question is about. So, I don't function, I really feel like we need to treat each other with a lot of respect. And one issue when I came back to Seacliff, I lived in other places, and I came back to the country, and I had to come to Seacliff because my parents were aging. And I walk up to the Seacliff School, and I see this, September 11th, 2001. What is this? Symbol of our hope for a future bright with freedom. And I'm not thick, I know this is to comfort a child, but this is not the right thing to write because it's not true. So I brought it to the attention of the superintendent. And he says to me after a couple of meetings, they're going to remove the stone. And then afterwards, he sends me an email. Our lawyers say we can keep it. And that was it, cold. I remember being here when a couple of these candidates were here, and a gentleman comes up to me in the room and he says, "Don't trust the superintendent." Of course, we're talking about the old superintendent. You realize this is 6 years ago. What we got to do is hold on to the good things we have because they're important. We have to identify more good things, and we have to let go of this negativity.
Thank you. Sarah? No, please hold it, okay, at the end when they give their closing statements. Thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. So right now, enrollment is down slightly over the past 10 years based on the most recent demographic study we got. But I thought what was interesting about that study is that the enrollment's still higher than it was in 2000, and it's much higher than it was in 1990. And I think it illustrates what some of my colleagues were referring to about the cyclical nature of the enrollments here. We've done demographic studies regularly for this district so that as part of this very long-term planning that we're constantly engaged in. But it's the first time that we had a capacity study, and by and large it indicated that how we were using our buildings was about right, that we were about at capacity. I think the only number that was concerning was the middle school was pretty high. The middle school could actually probably use some more space, and that's driven not so much by the number of students that we have as it is by the kinds of programs and the kinds of education that we're offering now. And so that's what we really have to look at too when we're talking about how to plan for the future. And finally, when it comes to anytime something comes up with like closing a school building, math is your friend. There are about 350 kids in Glen Head or Seacliff or smaller elementary schools. If you divide those in half and try and put those into another school, you can see that even the giant Glenwood Landing at 400 kids probably can't handle another 150, 200 kids. The math is always there. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
Well, I'd like to be able to speak intelligently on this topic, but the information's not available to me. Okay? I don't know where it is. All right? There's a lot of information about how this school district operates. The information's not out there. It's not on the website. I don't know where it is. Okay? The enrollment was supposed to decline from 2010 to 21 by 10%. We're still on track to do that? I don't know. Okay? That information hasn't been updated in who knows how long. So all of us in the community are sitting here wondering, are our schools being used efficiently? I don't know. So I show up at meetings and I ask questions about, are our schools being used efficiently? Do we need them? I don't know the answer to that. I think the people who are on the board need to know the answer to that. They're the ones who are supposed to be charting what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're doing it.
Thank you. David?
So, I'm on the board, and I know the answer to those questions. We did a demographic study when I first came on the board under the previous superintendent. I thought it was very cursory, and I was not happy with the information we gave. It didn't jive with what we were seeing in our buildings, so I requested and eventually got a new, very thorough demographic and capacity study, which about 2 board meetings ago was presented to us. Sarah and I just done beat that woman up, asking her a bunch of questions, and she was terrific and had all the information. She talked about the capacity, talked about our buildings. To the specific question that Tony had asked, we talked to her about, do we need more space? She said, no, I think you're okay right now. And we said there are some people, I'm not saying anyone in general, just saying there are some voices in the community that believe that closing a school can be a cost-saving move. And I thought it was the most telling moment of the whole presentation. She was a data-driven math person, and she was clinical in the way she gave the information. But when I asked that question, she let out a noise that I hadn't heard before, and she said, oh my God, no, that's crazy. You can't even, no, you can't close a school. And I thought that was just about telling. We use data, we use numbers, we request the information, we pore over it, we go through it publicly, we record those videos on that same machinery, which is available on the web. The demographic studies are on the web. And just as a final comment, because I forgot to mention it before, I have children in Glenwood Landing Elementary and the middle school. And when you see those kids go into those schools, if you go outside Glenwood Landing and see the smiles in those kids' faces running into those schools, I think you understand why the community schooling is working here.
Thank you. Next question.
So I did not know this, but you and I have probably crossed paths in our careers. We actually have some people in common in our careers, which I find interesting because what you and I do, what I did, is work on individual projects. Big, huge, incredibly expensive individual projects. What y'all do is work on companies that last generations. The reason I'm bringing that up is my question is, it seems and it feels to me like there's a lot of discussion about what we're going to take away, what we're going to cut, how we're going to cut, where are we going to take monies, where are we going to take privileges from teachers, where are we going to take away access that our children have to certain programs, things for children that have some disabilities, etc. My question is, what are y'all going to give us? What are you going to give our children? I'm tired of hearing about everybody wanting to take things away. What can you give us?
Thank you. Anthony, it's all yours.
What I want to give your children is what I want for my children is a real education, not preparation to make money in some particular role in our present society. I really believe that truly educated people, and I mentioned a few in my opening statement, that, there are people I've been privileged to know, I've been lucky to know. There's a gentleman, David Hart, who wrote about fairy tales and psychoanalysis. He's a youngin'. You can find these people. And Woodrow Wilson Sayre. I understand when people are truly educated how they see the world, and they're not grasping that they're to survive. They're living first. And it's the lucky thing that I've experienced, is to live first. I want your children to live. I don't want them to be afraid. Oh, how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to do that? I'm going to work hard and then I'm going to play hard. No, I want them to live today and tomorrow and the next day. And each day they live a full life, they will have the confidence to face the future. They'll never be afraid. This can be put into the curriculum if we have the guts to decide what our children need to learn. And instead, we let the state tell us what numbers we have to match to look good. And that's why we have these stupid signs out in front. Because we're trying to tell the world that we look good, but people that actually look good don't have to tell anybody.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Melissa. I can pretty easily rattle off a laundry list of the stuff the board is going to provide students in this coming year in the budget. For those that don't know, we're talking about much better model for special education teaching. We're talking about an additional social worker, a guidance counselor that we're getting into the elementary schools. And if you read the budget narratives, there are other things. There's additional security measures. There's longer safety hours. But I don't really think that's
what your question gets at, right? I think we have absolutely, in every budget, there are places that we have to cut, there are cost pressures, and we have found ways to put things that are important to parents back into that budget. And that's why the increases this year are in the program area rather than in the administrative area. But those pressures, right, mean that to some extent what I most want to give our kids is preserving the rich, well-rounded curriculum that we have now. But I could absolutely tell you the things aspirationally that I would want for our kids too, which is the more developmentally appropriate aspects of the curriculum, that we find the resources to have the facilities to have better indoor recess, to be able to offer sports in the winter to all of our middle school students and instead of having to be concerned about the facilities constraints. And that list is nearly endless, but that's what I'm trying to do here.
Thank you. Jerry?
I don't think we should cut anything. Seriously. But what we do need to do is we need to do things that are necessary and effective. All right? And that's taking a very, very hard look at what you do and determining what you do well, what needs to be improved, and is there really any value in doing what we're doing? All right? Because, like I've said, everybody learns differently. Everybody has different interests. Everybody's going to go in different directions. Not everybody's going to launch a rocket to the moon. Okay? Somebody's going to be an artist. Somebody's going to be working in a retail store. That's just how it's going to be. And we need to provide those opportunities for those people to do that. And, this is a pretty good school district. We're a very affluent area. We're very, very fortunate. All right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at, where we spend that money and how we spend that money and why we spend that money. It should be spent smart.
Thank you. David?
So, thank you, Melissa. I think we, as a board and we as a community, have to be guided by our values, but we also have to operate in a position of balance. We have a lot of different viewpoints in this community, as I think we all know, about the direction we should be heading, and we have a tremendous amount of diversity with regard to economic, with regard to background, with regard to educational experience in this community, and people value things differently. And so I have my own personal beliefs, and I come to this position with what I believe. But my role as a trustee is about representing the community as a whole and trying to find that balance. We have the option as a board of recommending a busting of the tax cap. To me, that would not be prudent. That's not where this community is going. It would help us fund new programs, but that to me doesn't seem sensible. On the other hand, cutting and increasing our class sizes, reducing our offerings, also doesn't seem like balance. So part of this job is trying to thread that needle. And I think on the larger scale, I'm not going to veer into any national politics, but from a very broad perspective, the question of cutting taxes versus cutting spending is something we've been dealing with in this country for decades and decades, if not centuries, and they still have no idea how to solve that problem. So they just go back and forth, and their answer is debt. We're not doing it with debt. We're trying to find a way to be responsible, to make sure that we are continuing to give the kids the education they need, to not cut those programs, but also be sensitive to the fact that we have economic diversity as well.
Thank you. Marianne?
So I'm not really sure I understand your question because we as a board have never discussed cutting opportunities for children. We have made cuts and reallocated dollars to make sure that we maintain and increase opportunities for our students. But I don't think the mindset of the board as a whole, since I've been on the board, and from the years prior to that where I've attended many board meetings, is to take anything away from our students. The goal has really been to look at other avenues where we can achieve cost savings rather than taking away dollars from students. And it may come down at certain times where we have to make choices if we want to implement new programs, but certainly not to the detriment of our students. I believe that we are committed to affording our students all the opportunities which will make them grow as a whole student, as I alluded to before, the fine and performing arts programs, the athletics, the clubs, all of that actually has increased since I've been on the board.
Thank you. And another question.
evening. My name is Brendan. What I'd like, I'm glad we kind of shifted back to the students a little bit. Please address the new ESSA regulations and state standards on mental health and wellness as it relates to North Shore as a whole, and specifically in the areas of homework, recess, and play for our students, or in the current status of North Shore's work on the overall mental health of our students.
Thank you. And Sarah, you're first.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. The mental health of our students has been a very pressing issue for the board for some time. I'm very glad that we've been able to put more resources into it with the current budget, but I think there's a lot more work we can do with it as well. As part of the strategic plan, this is one of those core pillars that we're looking at as sort of social emotional learning, but a lot of my discussion around this issue has been not just what we do to deal with the issues that students are feeling, that students are under stress, that students have various issues, but not just to give the kids tools with how to deal with it, but to recognize the role that the schools themselves are playing in creating those structures that are generating issues with students' mental health too. And that's where we get back to making sure things are developmentally appropriate in terms of recess, in terms of homework, and setting our students up to be as mentally healthy as they can be, and then on top of that, making sure they have the tools to deal with the other outside stresses that they feel as well. We have the budget support there, but there's a lot more work that I think we can do in that area.
Thank you. Jerry.
The mental health piece is pretty serious in schools today. I mean, what we're seeing going on in America is just unbelievable. All right, and I think it's really the community's responsibility, not just the schools, to know what's going on. We need to pay attention to what's happening. I think all of us went through school. It can be a pretty brutal place at times. You know, not everybody's well liked. You know, people are ostracized. You know, how do you stop that? I don't have all the answers for that. Okay, it's not easy it's not an easy thing to manage. And it's something that the community as a whole, the parents have to deal with. I'd like to tell you I have like a magic wand that I could tell you how to fix it. But, you know, people are working a lot. They're not as involved with their kids maybe as they should be. And they might miss certain cues. And it's, you know, do I need to learn more about it? Absolutely. Do we all need to learn more about it? Sure, it would help.
Thank you. David.
So, people talk about what makes North Shore somewhat unique. I think one of the things that is different about North Shore is that we orient our entire academic program of what we call our SVOs, our shared value outcomes. And that is a different way to look at the way we look at our programs, the way we look at our schools, and the way we look at our curricula than testing or attendance or more traditional metrics. Those help teach our not just our students, but teach our teachers and orient the entire program around being self-aware and trying to note that these things are going on. We talk about the opioid addiction problem in our schools, which is a problem everywhere, but certainly is a problem here at North Shore as much as anywhere, unfortunately. And it's something that we're aware of, and we have been trying to fight in this community for a very long time. Bullying is something that has been very difficult for students and prevents learning. Each of the elementary schools has implemented a specific curriculum to combat bullying and to try to prevent students from feeling ostracized or disconnected. We commissioned a very long equity study last year, which we have looked at again this year to try to implement and continuing to look at it to try to find students who don't feel connection to our buildings and feel, for lack of a better term, somewhat lost or disconnected, and recognizing that those students need our help. They need an adult in each building who can help them, who can guide them, and it is an ongoing process. And social emotional learning is a big part of that.
Thank you. Mary Ann.
Since I've been here on the Board of Education, we really have looked at this issue and we've been increasing it, our awareness of it and our resources for it. This year we will have a guidance counselor dedicated to the elementary schools, one guidance counselor shared throughout 3 elementary schools. We added a social worker to the middle school 2 years ago, I believe, 3 years ago. I asked for a guidance review study, which resulted in an additional guidance counselor being added at the high school level. We just recently had a challenge day at the middle school, which was focused on mental health. We partnered with the middle school PTO who sponsored it. Hopefully that will be coming to the high school next year. There is a homework committee that is reviewing homework. Homework, I believe, is necessary for the teacher to know if the student is understanding it, but it should be appropriate and it should be meaningful, not just homework for the sake of homework. But that is being looked at, not only what the amount of homework is given, but the quality of the homework that's assigned. So I really think this district has its finger on the pulse on the mental health issue and the needs of our students.
Thank you. And Anthony?
I don't think we're doing a good job at all, and I wouldn't be here if I thought we were doing a good job. It's the only reason I'm here. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old in the schools. I have a 2.5-year-old. And I have, I think, another son in July.
That's exciting.
What
Congratulations.
am I doing? I said to my wife, hon, we do this 6 times a year. We're going to have to cut it to 4. She says, I'm getting my tubes tied. So that's life, The thing is, I don't mind it. It's good. Life is good. I got no complaints. I'm the happiest guy you'll ever meet. But I really care about my children, and I do not like the environment. The peer pressure has never improved. I've never seen, it has been all taken over by media and popular ideas, which should be unpopular. We have to instill in children ideas that are available to them. Things that people talked about for thousands of years are right out there. I'm not turning them all into followers in some cult or anything. This is just a general discussion of what life means, and it has to be introduced earlier because, why? Well, puberty is hitting earlier. And it's very confusing, and we had not addressed it. We used to have these stupid health programs that were supposed to help us get through puberty, and they were no good at all. All right, I'm done.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Lloyd Nadell. I live in Glen Head. A month or so ago, I was at a meeting up here at the high school about a proposed bond that's supposed to go out sometime in the fall, I believe. The production, it was in the library, and there was I call it a production, people who were selling to the school district things like fancy entranceway, designed to security, soft furniture, because the students could learn better on that, new rugs so students could sit on the floor and learn, walls of windows to open up the environment, and so on. The question is, it is my understanding that 3 bonds are being retired this year. And it is my understanding that somebody is pushing for this bond because 3 bonds are being retired this year. And my question is, would the board consider retiring 3 bonds, not renewing a bond for these things that perhaps I view a little facetiously, and cutting some of the debt service of the budget? That would be my question. Instead of floating another bond, cutting the debt service.
They're all interesting. Jerry, you are first.
Well, I think the first thing you have to ask is, what would happen if you didn't do it? What would happen if you didn't spend the money, right? Would the ceiling cave in? I mean, we've replaced the roofs and the boilers in this district more times than I can count since I've been here, okay? I don't know how many times, all right? But really, before you make a decision, you have to say, okay, we're going to fix this over here. Can we wait another year? This is stuff we do at home. This is stuff we do in business. Can I afford to replace the roof this year? Or maybe I could wait till the next cycle. And you have to look at that. Did the board look that deeply at it? Did the administration look that deeply at it? I don't know. I know. What I do know is we're not going to vote on the bond when we vote on the school budget. Okay? It's going to be done in the fall. That's my understanding of what's going to happen. And I don't know why it's not done at the time we vote on the budget. And you can get the best turnout and the most exposure for people to see what's going on and how our money's being spent.
Thank you. David?
So the schools have many different funding availabilities to us as a district. The budget is certainly one area, and the bond is another one. There are various other ones. There's capital reserves, there are repair reserves, there's all sorts of different options of how we fund our things. The budget is made to fund the general operation of the district. When I talked earlier in my opening about what people have done in this community for generations is not about general maintenance, but about continuously improving our district for ourselves and for future generations. And you don't build a new building, not that we're even discussing doing that in a bond, but you don't do that through general operations. You have this bond, which is part of, I was there at that meeting with you, and I appreciated your questions, and I appreciate this question. I think it's important to get input from everyone in the community. And we are getting input from everyone in the community. There's advisory committees, there are public meetings, we're discussing it at our board meetings. 30 seconds, okay. And we are trying to get a pulse of the community. And what I think is clear is that having a tax-neutral bond is something that is palatable to the community. We will see. We will continue discussing that. Not everyone, that's the balance that I'm talking about. I'm sensing you're probably a no. But but in that bond, there would be infrastructure that can't be done. There would be instructional spaces that can't be done. The way that kids are learning in 2019 is not the way they were learning in 1959 and not the way they will learn in 2059. So this is an opportunity with input from the community to fund those projects.
Okay. Thank you. Mary Ann.
So our engineers and architects do a 5-year study of our facilities. So that facilities study tells us in 5 years what needs to be done and what we have to do to maintain the facilities and keep them up to date. So our bonds previously have focused. The last bond we did was really exclusively a repair bond. It was roofs, it was bathrooms, it was things, walls that needed to be fixed. All in favor of maintaining our facilities. Glen Cove recently tried to float an $84 million bond, which was defeated by the voters because they did not keep their facilities up to code or in good order. So the choice is, do we keep our facilities in good order through the budget? Sometimes we have to do that in a bonding capacity because the number is too large to actually put it in the budget. It's too big of a project. Some of it we can put into a bond. I'm in favor of keeping our facilities in good order and maintaining a safe environment for our students to learn. I think we have to be careful when we decide to float a bond as to what we're putting in that bond, especially with the pressure that our community is feeling.
Thank you. And Anthony?
Well, I would ask my dad, we're going to build a house, how do you put in the bid? And he said, I'd count the 2x4s. You've got to know every single part of the house, and then you figure out how much it's going to cost. And a few years back, I said, well, we're getting this $5 million bond for 5 roofs and some other stuff. And I said, holy cow, that's a lot of roofing. I wonder what the square foot price we're paying is, because I would know what it should be. You got to know who you're working with, whether you got the right people doing the work. Sometimes you put the bids out. If you don't get a good bid, you wait till next year. You do some patching. You got to make people play ball with you in business. You can't just hand it out. You don't go to Angie's List. All right, I had a guy, I had my furnace go out, and I had a guy show up, and I said, well, this is this, and this is that, this is where we've gone, and he was looking it over. He said, I don't think I can fix this. I'm going to call another guy. I said, no, you're not. I know you can do this. And I haven't had heat for 2 weeks, and it doesn't matter, you can fix it next week. This is on Martha's Vineyard. I was visiting there, and I was going to leave. I said, but you can do it. Next morning, he calls me. I figured it out. He didn't even bill me for that. He says, "Can I clean the furnace?" I said, "Sure." So I paid him for a thermostat and cleaning the furnace. The fact is, you have to know something about buildings if you're going to maintain them. If you don't know anything and you're just on a board, that doesn't cut it.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Thank you. Thanks, Lloyd, for bringing up the bond. I think this is an important issue for the community. Although the debt structure is more complicated in how it's rolling off than we were able to describe here. So the district is absolutely looking at a way to see if we can have a bond in a tax-neutral way, but I want to assure the community that it's early, that there are more community meetings coming up, that there's more input to be had, and there's more discussion to be had, and that there are no cute rugs of any kind in the bond. I think anyone would love to be able to have less debt, but because the school district is absolutely good at long-term planning, we can all look at the numbers to indicate what the infrastructure needs are in the district right now, much less what's going to happen over the next several years. And we've got tens of millions of dollars of repairs that need to be made to our schools. You could not do it. You could kick that can down the road, but that's not the kind of district we're trying to be. We are not trying to leave problems for someone else to deal with in the future when those problems become worse. With regard to the timing on a bond vote, I think we're going to try and have that bond vote as soon as we're ready to do it, because we need to be able to do the work as soon as we're able to do it, particularly if interest rates continue to change. And I also want to assure everybody that the board's looked really closely at how our bid processes work. And we have a lot of confidence in the way we're putting work out to contractors.
Thank you. I believe there are two more people with questions here, and those will be the last two questions, and then we'll go to
Closing statements. Amy Byer, Glenhead. I have a two-part question, and if it's possible for the candidates who are not currently sitting on the board to answer them first, I'd appreciate that.
You can do that.
The first question is, what do you believe the most important role of a school board member is? And the second question is, because there's been some discussion about other districts doing things better than North Shore, how would you define the success of a school district?
All right, I'll take them in the order that they would go, but Anthony, you're first.
Well, I really think the children should be happy, well-adjusted. If not, they're not getting a good education. They shouldn't be afraid of the world ahead of them. They should be prepared. That's what schools are for. So, of the candidates tonight, I am the educator. I was a professional educator. I use that word carefully because if you didn't want me working in your school, I just left. And if I didn't want to work in your school, I just left. I was never going to compromise my teaching for anything. I didn't care if I didn't get a pension. I only wanted to teach. That's part of my life. So I really think when you're looking at a school board, you should be picking people like me. I mean, it's good to have a business background and know how to balance numbers, but, you know, we have accountants too. It's really not that hard to make some of these decisions. Yeah, there's a contract that says all that millions of dollars goes to these people, and all that millions of dollars goes to those people. Now you can tweak it a little bit like we heard before. You don't have to be a business genius to tweak a $110 million budget a little bit left or right. I don't think it takes that much. It's big numbers, but they're done. They're pretty much done. Now there are things that you need on the board that steer the faculty and the administration and everybody in the district to do what we want for our children. And I believe that's for them to be well-adjusted and happy.
Thank you. And Jerry?
As a school board member, or the board member of any nonprofit or any organization, is to ask good questions. Ask good questions that get you the outcomes that you think you need. And you can't be afraid to ask good questions. They may not be popular sometimes. And that just happens. I mean, what are you going to do? But, you know, as a board member, I've done it in the past with the nonprofits I've been on, where I've asked some very unpopular questions in the room. And then people came up to me afterwards and said, wow, I'm so glad you asked that question. I was like, well, why didn't you? Why did it have to be me all the time? You know, I'm not afraid to ask good questions. All right? And maybe that's why I look at things differently. All right? So, you know, that's how you move an organization forward, is when you challenge people. You challenge them to think about things they haven't thought of, haven't done, and, you know, may not react to. So it's about showing up prepared. It's about showing up and saying, why are we doing this? What are we doing? So, and part two of that is defining a success of a school district. That's really about the outcomes of how well those students are adjusted in the community. And actually, the school district only plays a small role in that. You know, in my home, my wife and I determined how our children did and what they did. All right, school was for learning. Okay, there's a certain amount you have to learn. There's a certain amount that you have to do, and you have to do well. All right, because when you get out into the real world, guess what? You have to do well. Otherwise, you won't be doing it for very long.
Thank you. David?
So when you become a school board trustee, you go to an initial meeting and you are given a tremendous amount of literature that helps define what your role is, which I have, I think, a new section of the house for. But the role of a school board member is very clearly delineated, and it has the same as a corporate structure. We are a executive board that oversees the operation of the school district, and we have two primary responsibilities. Above all else, to hire and evaluate the superintendent. I was fortunate enough in that my first year on the board, that's one of the largest projects that we did. We certainly put forth a budget and reviewed a million other things, but it was a huge process of searching for and hiring that superintendent. And so I got a first-hand look at what we were looking for, what that process is like, and understanding that role. And then evaluating that superintendent to help guide him is important. There are teachers on our board, and I learn from them, and it's good to have variety on a board, but I'm not a teacher, and I'm certainly not going to suggest to the superintendent, hey, you should be teaching this version of math versus that version of math. That's not my role. My role is to make sure that the superintendent is overseeing an administration that is current, that is getting students interested and delighting in learning, because that is how you measure a district. I wrote down a couple things here. How I measure success: I want students who delight in learning, students who grow through challenges, students who are prepared for the world and to contribute to society in a positive way. That's what I want. I have people in my business at different levels, and the ones who succeed are the ones who understand the context within which they're operating and can ask questions and can be thoughtful at every level.
Thank you. Marianne?
So the role of a board member is to be a steward for the community. And I agree with Jerry that we are required to ask good questions, because that's our role. We are overseeing, and I don't think anyone who's ever been to a meeting will disagree that I've asked a lot of questions. So I think that is our role, to make sure that the school is functioning in the most fiscally responsible manner, that we are having opportunities for all students. As for success, I think outcomes are defined differently for different people, and I would say that we're successful if we afford the opportunity for every child to achieve his or her goal, whether that's going to Harvard or being a professional baseball player or a ballroom dancer. My kids didn't go to Harvard, but I consider both of them highly successful. I believe that their experience and nurture absolutely contributed to their success later in life. And I even have one on the other side of college, and I can tell you that the management skills she learned here have clearly transferred to her jobs in college and to her volunteer work post-college in the type of good outcomes she is getting where she is now.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Thank you. Truthfully, we spend a lot of time doing things like approving contracts, and that's an important part of it. It's just doing that homework and doing the work that's involved. But I think the other important things we do, we set policy, we have to set a budget, we have to monitor student achievement, and of course we have to hire and supervise the superintendent, which was an important process that Dave referred to too. I think the budget's a major lever that school board members have. And I think it's something that you have to bring your values to. I think it's something that you have to bring your skepticism to, which has been referred to as your questions also. You have to bring hours of reading to it. It's 400 pages, and you've got to bring some very serious data analysis skills to it too, if you want to be able to look at it over what's been happening over the past 5 years and what's going to be happening in the next 5 years. Not everyone wants to put that kind of heavy lifting into a document that's so incredibly important to our students' future. I'm proud of the work that I've done on the budget and where that budget has ended up, and so many of you have been in those meetings and have seen the work that the board has put into those, so I hope you see that too. Where I want our students to stand up, certainly I think the SVOs are an incredibly important skill set that I'd like all of our students to stand up with, but I think more importantly is we want kids that are thrilled to go to school, that are engaged when they're there, that end up being lifelong learners, and that are successful in life on whatever metrics you want to use in your family for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have our last question.
Hi, everyone. Tracy Backer, Seacliff. I'm going to speak really quickly. So before I had my 3 kids, I earned my master's in art education, and I was an art teacher. I think teaching is one of the most noble professions there is, and I think teachers are underpaid and undervalued, and I think there's an overall lack of respect and appreciation for the profession in general. I have here a quote, and I'm not going to read it because I'm worried it's abusive.
Okay, and good, don't read it.
I have here a quote by Jerry Romano about his feelings about the North Shore School District's teachers, and it is scathing, and it made me shake.
Okay, but please ask your question.
My question is, I think we're blessed in the North Shore District. I think our teachers are phenomenal. Do you think there are any shortcomings? How do you think our teachers should be evaluated? Are they being fairly evaluated in this district? And do you think our education, our teachers are at the level they should be for what we pay?
Okay, Mary Ann, you're first.
I will take exception, really, to singling out a candidate. I don't think it's appropriate. Let me preface my response with that. I think overall, the teaching staff is a very high quality. I believe that, like any other school, no matter whether it's a private school that you're paying $100,000 for your kid to go to, or it's a public school, there are teachers who are less engaged and are not able to reach the number of students. And sometimes that's a matter of the teacher not having the appropriate training, and sometimes it's not a good match with the student in and of him or herself. I think our evaluation process could be more critical, and I think critical evaluation process leads to improvement in any field, whether that's teaching, whether that's administration, whatever you're doing, whether that's being an attorney, whatever your gift is, whatever your job title is. And I think we could be a little bit more proactive in a positive way with some of our teachers to have better outcomes.
Thank you. Anthony?
Well, all the teachers, since, my kids are here, that I've met, I've been fairly well impressed with. There are some that I think could be a little more on the ball. I remember when I was a kid the kind of abuses that we suffered. I remember being kicked in the tailbone for not walking fast enough in the hall, in the junior high. I remember a teacher tapping on my pants above the head of my penis while he was talking to me. I remember teachers that were mentally abusive. I don't know that all our teachers are so good because I'm not allowed really in the school. It would be disruptive. I had a friend who was in a school district where, as a mother, she could go into any class any day she wanted. That was the school policy. Parents could just come right in. So I was a bit taken aback when my kids started here and they said, well, no, that you can't do that. I really think the teachers I've met so far, I'm okay with, but I don't know where it's going to go later, and I don't like the fact that I hardly meet them. I think that's wrong, okay? We on the board will be the stewards of the schools. The superintendent will be answerable to us. we will be representative of you and what you value and think is most important in the schools is what I am going to make sure, as far as I can, is what your children experience.
Thank you. Sarah?
Certainly personally, I'm tremendously grateful for the teachers that we've had the opportunity to experience and get to know in various ways. I am confident in what I've seen in both of our hiring processes and our tenure processes. I think we have significant, rigorous processes that we implement consistently. And this is why, to a large part, we put so much time and effort into who we've hired as a superintendent and who we've hired as an assistant superintendent, because these processes are really important to our schools. You know, and I'll also say that if this is an area that you're concerned about for any reason, sort of the quality of our teaching staff, if you're concerned about the supervision of our teachers, that is, in fact, where administration comes into play. You know, if that's your concern, I think an administrative budget should also be part of that concern, because the way we do that is by having administrators in the classroom doing the observations, making the notes, and providing feedback to people. Because, and truthfully, obviously, everyone can grow, and professional development's very important, and that's been a value that we put into, that I've certainly advocated for to be in the budget also. So those pieces do go together.
Thank you. Jerry, I just want to say I'm sorry that you were singled out by some of the questioners. Thank you for maintaining your cool.
No problem. So no one likes to be told they're not doing a good job. It's a fact, right? But the fact is, in an organization, there are going to be people who aren't up to the task. They need to be trained or trained out. This is what we do in business, okay? It's not as easy to do in a school district, so maybe you could move those people who aren't trainable other places where they could do less damage. That's what we do in business. We had our children go through this school district. Not every teacher was great. Some of them were terrible, okay? And we told management that they weren't good, all right? And that's the way we are. Not everybody's willing to do that. The way you get better at doing something is self-reflecting. And if you can't do that, then you need somebody else to tell you when you're not doing something right. So if you don't like hearing that, I don't know what to tell you, all right? But the thing is, our children only get one shot at going through the school district, one chance. Everybody's got to be on the ball. That's the way it has to be.
Thank you. And David?
Overall, we have, I believe, an incredibly strong faculty here in the North Shore School District. While I don't base my decisions as a trustee on my own experience, certainly the teachers with whom I've had the most interaction have been, across the board, very strong. There is nothing that is 100% in this world, but I think that teachers in general are a very easy scapegoat in our society, and I believe that there are negative forces in our community that feel very comfortable criticizing people, particularly online, and I'm not referring to Jerry. Sorry. That find it very easy to criticize them as a scapegoat. They're unhappy about their taxes, and they want to blame teachers. I think teachers, in general, have an incredibly difficult task in front of them, and it is often a thankless job. Certainly nothing is universal. One of the things this district did before I came on board was they moved the tenure application, in most cases, from 3 years to 4 years. Tenure is a marriage, and potentially more difficult to get out of than a marriage. I haven't gotten out of my marriage, so I don't know. But my wife's here. Everything's good. Everything's good. But going through that process before you enter into that marriage is incredibly important, and we as a district have recognized that. And obviously there are people who don't necessarily teach the same way they do later in their career as they did when they got that tenure. But overall, we have a strong faculty that is succeeding in our district, in my opinion.
Thank you. And now we are ready for closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes for a closing statement, and before they begin, I just want to thank the audience. This was wonderful. You are very privileged that you have all these people willing to give their time for no money to you for the next 3 years. So, we begin with Jerry Romano.
I don't want to be on the school board. I really don't. I'd rather be doing something else with my time. I need to be on the school board because I've attended enough meetings to know that the meetings aren't even run well. The information's not presented well. It's not audible when you sit in the room. $107 million budget. You'd think you'd be able to hear what's being said. All right? You can't. And I thought it was just me. And I asked somebody who was sitting next to me at one of the last meetings, I said, can you understand what's going on? They said, no. That's the first thing I would fix. All right? The second thing would be transparency, putting all the information out there so everybody could see it. This is a public institution. It belongs to the public. It belongs to the community. Why shouldn't they have access to that information? That's what I would want to see. And then start the process of developing really solid metrics to figure out how do you make it better. And yeah, some people are not going to be happy. People don't like change. Like I said, they don't like being told that they don't know what they're doing or they need to improve because everybody gets comfortable. We like doing what we do when we do it. Most people, if they had a choice, they'd probably go to work at 10 and leave at 2. I would. I can't. All right? I have too much to do every day. I really wouldn't. I like what I do. All right? But again, I don't want to be on the school board. I need to be on the school board.
Thank you. David.
Again, I thank everyone for coming tonight. I think this has been a productive evening. It's been hopefully clarifying for people if you weren't sure who you wanted to support. There were some things that you probably mentioned early on that didn't come up that I guess I should probably mention from a resume perspective, that I have coached so many kids, that I have resuscitated a community organization, that I have been on different athletic boards. And the reason I bring that up right now, as you leave tonight, and as you talk to people, and as you go through the community, you should ask about me. Talk about people who know me. Ask them what they think of me. Ask them if I'm a respectful person. Ask them if I'm an open person. Ask them if I'm a fair person. I have been in many situations, primarily around softball, assigning people on teams, where I make a lot of parents unhappy and a lot of kids unhappy. And I think universally, despite their unhappiness, they'll say that I was fair and I listened. And I think being respectful is an incredibly important part of this. And it's something that I believe strongly, and it's the kind of leader that I am. I hope that came across tonight, as well as the other specific points that I wanted to talk about. And again, I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary Ann.
Thank you again for coming out and hearing our thoughts and our views and for your intriguing and interesting and thought-provoking questions. It's really been my honor and my privilege to sit in the chair as your representative on the Board of Education for the past 6 years. I believe that I have contributed to the process, the outcomes. I think my legal background has been really invaluable in times when there's litigation and contract review, in areas where I have a particular expertise that no one else on the board at the present time has. It brings something different to the table. I've been committed to this district, as you can hear from my rather lengthy resume, for the past 15 years. And I hope to continue to contribute to this community, because this is my community and your community. It's our community. I'm committed to it. I love this community. I hope my children are able to come back and live here and raise their children in this community. And I am committed to making it that our seniors can stay, that our students can stay, that our graduates can come back here, and that we still have successful, good outcomes for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Anthony.
Well, I don't consider my hands are tied at all if you put me on the board. I'll be talking about things that I think no one would even consider. I wonder if we just took a fraction of what we use for our children and sort of repurposed it into a different experience if it would not be a truly better experience. I feel we are dissipated into all kinds of little things here, there, and everywhere, except where we really need to concentrate. There are children that go to schools with the budgets a tenth of ours. A tenth. And they are getting good educations. They are learning the essentials of life. You know, sometimes I just think, I don't know why my child is in Latin in 6th grade when I was driving to school, we were a few days late. I said, well, there's sum, est, sumus, estis, sunt, because es and estis, there's you singular and you plural. And I asked him in November, well, what have you learned? So, well, we're doing Roman numerals. I thought that was part of mathematics. You know, we're wasting, we say we're teaching something, but why don't you just wait till 8th grade or something, you know, for that? If you're not really going to teach it, don't dissipate this time in school into this little dibble and that little dabble. We are wasting a tremendous amount of resources, and you can only do so much in life. You're going to have to choose left or right. You're going to have to go center, maybe back up. 2 steps forward, 1 back. Look around, 2 steps forward. That's the dance of life. Children are not learning that. We're being told, funnel here, funnel there. I think it's wrong. I think we waste their lives in school, and we end up with cognitive dissonance, which is why they have so little respect in so many ways and so much willingness to experiment in things they should not be doing.
Thank you. And Sarah, you'll round this out.
Well, this is all a tough act to follow. I'll say that, like, as a parent, as a taxpayer, and certainly as a business owner too, I think we have a lot to be proud of in our schools. And I think we all can see the challenges, though, that lie ahead for us. Challenges is just going to take a tremendous amount of time and effort and hard work to move through and to keep our schools where we want them to be. But I think we're stronger together. And I think we've discussed a lot tonight about these issues, but I want to point out that the conversation does not have to end here. Please reach out, ask your questions, be skeptical. Please look for firsthand information. We need everyone here to be informed. The district has worked very hard to be transparent. I think you'd be astonished about the amount of information that's put out at board meetings and online, contracts, budgets, audits, claims. The list of audits is pretty endless, treasurer's reports. Take advantage of that if that's what interests you. Thank you to everyone who came out to participate tonight. In particular, I really have to thank my fellow trustees for all the time that you've given to the board already these past several years. Thank you to everyone who is running today. It is a tremendous statement to say that you're willing to put in the kind of time that we're talking about over the next 3 years of elected, so thank you. Neighbors and friends, thank you so much for participating tonight. The turnout was great. It was really very gratifying to see. It makes it easier to run, to know that people are interested in what we're doing. And most importantly, regardless of your decision, please join us and vote on May 21st in this building. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say, as usual, I'm really impressed by the level of questioning in this community and the multitude of issues that you touched on. No wonder you have a great school system. Thank you all. Oh, and thanks to Francine, our faithful timekeeper.